Hey. So you guys want to talk about Bionicles? So when I was a kid, I was never really into playing with Lego bricks. And I think that the reason for that is that the things that Lego bricks are typically used to build were not things that interested me. See, in my experience growing up, there are two main kinds of boy between the ages of 4 and 10 when it comes to playing with toys. There's the kind that prefers playing with things, and there's the kind that prefers playing with people. That sounds very creepy. Characters. If you're a things kid, it means you like to play with weapons and vehicles and buildings. I like to refer to these kinds of kids as truck kids. Derogatory. I was not that kind of kid. I was a character-focused kid. I was into superheroes and action figures and anime. You know, the kind of kid that grows up to be a really edgy teenager and then grows up from that to make YouTube videos about the storyline of children's properties. Now, if you're a things kid, Lego has you set for life. There is no shortage of buildings and vehicles to play with in Lego, but if you're a character kid, But then, around 2001, somebody at Lego was like, hey, hang on a second. I bet that there is an entire demographic of kids who like the idea of building a thing by putting together a bunch of little parts, but don't like the things that you usually build out of Lego. And I bet that if we could somehow tap into that market, we could make a lot of money. And, they were right. So Lego created Bionicle, an original line of character-focused Legos made of their own unique parts that were not bricks, made for kids who didn't like trucks. And this was a really good idea, and it worked really well. But the thing about this idea is that it requires context. When you're selling vehicles and buildings to kids, there's really not much you need to do in the way of context. A fire truck puts out fires, and that's basically all they need to know. But if you're gonna make your own original characters, and you're expecting kids to engage with them, you need to provide your own original context also, because otherwise nobody's gonna care. Now, the context doesn't have to be anything crazy or ridiculous or complicated. You really just need to give a general idea of what's going on. So Lego went to a writer by the name of Greg Farshtey, and they said, okay, Farshtey, we need you to come up with a setting for our new line of character-focused Legos. Just something simple for the kids. Good versus evil. The big guys protect the little guys from the even bigger guys. Just have an outline on our desk by tomorrow, okay? And Greg Farshtey responded by creating a 100,000-year timeline, which would then go on to inform the next 10 real-life years of extremely intricate world building and storytelling. He went so far beyond what was expected, or frankly even asked of him, that it was eventually a problem. Because Bionicle ran from 2001 to 2010, which means that if you got on the Bionicle train in 2001, by 2010 you were kind of aging out of it. But if you wanted to get on the Bionicle train in 2010, you didn't have a chance in hell, dude. The lore was impenetrable at that point. Also, by the way, I'm pretty sure that Greg Farshtey actually was not unilaterally responsible for the entire Bionicle storyline. I'm not even sure he was on board right at the very beginning, but Greg Farshtey wrote the vast majority of everything Bionicle, and more importantly, I think it's just kind of funnier to act like he did all of this by himself, so that's what I'm gonna do. So Bionicle got canceled in 2010 because it had become too complicated to be a viable product, but a lot of people didn't even make it that far. I would say that the vast majority of people who played with Bionicles as kids did not collect them all or follow the storyline for all 10 years. They just kind of had the blue one. And honestly, I think that's kind of tragic, because the storyline of Bionicle is so insane and amazing and stupid that it is a crime for it not to be remembered. But luckily for the human race as a whole, I have no life. But luckily for the human race as a whole, I remember Bionicle. And I have now gone back through and read everything and watched everything and pulled my giant ridiculous crate of old Bionicles out of the shadow realm that it's been sitting in for the last 20 years so that I can share it with you in these videos. Now, one thing I want to note before we get into this is that the events of the Bionicle storyline are not in linear order, and I'm going to be sharing these things with you in release order. So in other words, you're going to hear about these things in the order that we heard about them and not the order that makes sense, because if I gave them to you in the order that makes sense, there is a possibility that you might understand what's happening. And if you understand what's happening for like most of Bionicle, you're not having the true Bionicle experience. Okay, with all that said, let's get right into it because we got a lot to cover. Part 1, the Mata Nui. So there's this this guy called the Great Spirit Mata Nui, and for all intents and purposes right now, Mata Nui is God. He is the creator lord of the universe, and he is the creator lord of the Matoran, the main residents of it, who kind of fall at an intersection point between children, hobbits, and the civilians in superhero movies. There are a lot of different kinds of things living in this universe, but the Matoran are the common folk, and they're also Mata Nui's chosen people. So he bestows upon them two gifts: the three virtues, unity, duty, and destiny, which is their moral code, and an island paradise for them to live on. And the Matoran name this island in honor of their creator, Mata Nui. So we've got Mata Nui the guy, and we've got Mata Nui the place, and I hope you're not confused yet because we're like 5 seconds in. For a little bit right at the beginning, the Matoran were called the Tahunga. I think what happened there is that Lego got sued by the Maori, because Tahunga is like a Maori word, and they were trying to copyright Maori words, which is not a super chill thing for them to be doing. I don't know anything about that really, because that's not part of the lore, and I only know about Bionicle lore. Everything else in the world is a mystery to me, but I'm pretty sure that that did happen. Now, the Matoran on Mata Nui fall into 6 color-coded and elementally themed categories, each of which has its own village in its own region. The 6 elements are a recurring motif throughout all of Bionicle, and they are as follows: fire, water, earth, ice, air, and stone. Now, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. Thing number 1, if it's blue, it's female, and if it's any other color, it's male, except actually that stopped being true like 5 years in, and they didn't really make that clear. I was confused about that for a while. Thing number 2, air is green, and it's associated with jungle environments, but it is not jungle element or plant element. I feel like a lot of people thought that green Bionicles were jungle element because they are constantly shown with jungle imagery, and honestly it was really misleading, but they're not. They are air, but they do live in the jungle. Thing number 3, what is the difference between earth and stone? Aren't those just basically the exact same thing? That's a great question. Yes, they are the same thing. I mean, they're different in terms of like color and culture and the geography of their region, but in terms of like what is the element, what is the physical matter, it's the same thing. Honestly, they should have just wrapped these both into earth, but then made stone yellow and make it lightning, because that would have been cooler and looked better and not have been dumb. And they eventually did make stone yellow because that's a better color for a Bionicle, but whatever. So anyway, the Matoran are living it up on their island paradise, and everything is great and amazing and perfect until this guy shows up. Now, this guy is Makuta, and in case you couldn't tell from everything about him, this guy is bad news. Makuta is our main antagonist, the evil master of shadows, local vaguely eldritch demiurge, 4D chess god, and Power Rangers villain, and Mata Nui's brother. Now, Makuta is jealous of the love and worship that the Matoran give to Mata Nui and do not give to him, which, I mean, Mata Nui created them and gave them an island paradise to live on, whereas Makuta didn't do either of those things, and also is evil, and also is just kind of a dick. So in his jealousy, Makuta betrays Mata Nui and casts him into eternal slumber. And with Mata Nui in eternal slumber, Makuta is free to take over the island and start ruining the lives of the Matoran, which I'm sure is going to be great for getting him all the love that he wants. But Makuta is a very hands-off type of villain, so he does this by corrupting the local wildlife, which are called Rahi. Anything that we would call an animal, Bionicle calls a Rahi. There are a lot of Rahi, like a whole book that is nothing but Rahi. I have a couple here. This one is called a Nui Rama. It's kind of like a wasp or a dragonfly type situation. And this one's called a Tarakava, and it's described as a lizard, but it's got tank treads and rock'em sock'em robot arms, and I don't know how that qualifies it to be a lizard. This does not read as a lizard to me in any way. So Makuta uses his shadow powers to make the Rahi evil and aggressive, and they start attacking the Matoran and confining them to their villages. And the Matoran try to fight back. They form like little militias, but Matoran are weak and bad, and so that doesn't really work. So basically everything just sucks for the next 1,000 years. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So this is never really like explained, or to be honest, even said out loud, but all Bionicle characters are just kind of like immortal. Like, they can be killed, but they don't age. And also the timing and process by which Bionicles come into being is at best vague. So Every character in this story is absolute bare minimum 10,000 years old. And when I say that the Matoran are getting terrorized for 1,000 years, I'm not talking about like the Matoran species. I'm talking about the same 1,500 or so guys for 1,000 years. So everything is bad for a very long time, but this whole situation finally changes with the arrival of the Toa. Toa are the main characters for the majority of the franchise. They are elementally powered superheroes that exist to fight evil and protect the Matoran. They almost always operate in teams of 6 based around the 6 elements, and this team of Toa, well, at the moment they're just the Toa because they're the only Toa we know about, but later we would come to know them as the Toa Mata because they're the protectors of Mata Nui. Let me give you guys a quick rundown of the Toa. Tahu, Toa of Fire, leader, asshole, loud, domineering, combative, arrogant, would definitely describe himself as an alpha male. Kopaka, Toa of Ice, asshole, cold, rude, antisocial, arrogant, would definitely describe himself as a sigma male. Lewa, Toa of Air, dumbass, hyperactive, annoying, too stupid to live. Pohatu, Toa of Stone, dumbass, but in an endearing way this time. He's like a frat bro, but one of the actual cool and nice ones who will like offer to help you out at the gym. Onua, Toa of Earth, strong, silent type, patient, wise, has a good energy to him, but is pretty inarguably the least entertaining Toa. Gali, Toa of Water, girl. Like, I really wish there was more to it than that, but there really is. Like, okay, what do you think the qualities of the one female Toa are? Did you guess that she is the kind, nurturing, emotionally intelligent one who spends all of her time trying to mediate the fights between the hot-headed boys? Like, she's a good character and she's cool and she's one of my favorites, but like, Lego, I know you were making this for 6-year-old boys and the only woman they've ever interacted with is their mom, but you didn't have to just make Gali their mom, you know? Anyway, if it wasn't clear from those descriptions, I love the Toa Mata and their group dynamic is a lot of fun. So the Toa wash up on Mata Nui in these canisters. They have no memories except for their own names, and they kind of just wander around the island for a while until they make it to the villages where they meet the Turaga. The Turaga are the leaders and elders of the villages, and like everything else in Bionicle, there are 6 of them. Vakama, Nokama, Matau, Wenua, Onewa, and Nuju. Now I know what you're thinking. I just said only moments ago that Bionicles are immortal and don't age, so how can there be village elders? That's crazy. Well, guess what? It's kind of a spoiler, so I'm just not gonna tell you, actually. So the Toa meet with the Turaga, and the Turaga are like, okay, yeah, we knew you guys would be coming. It was written in the stars. It was prophesized. You really took your time. We could have used you at some point in the last 1,000 years, but whatever. You're here now. It's your job to free us from Makuta's tyranny, but you're not actually strong enough to do it yet, so you guys need to go out there, find each other, team up, and collect the masks. All right, let's talk about masks. So masks, aka Kanohi, aka Kanohi masks, are Bionicle's eternal gimmick. Bionicle would introduce many gimmicks throughout the years, which I'll be keeping you notified of as they come up. But what's funny about Bionicle's gimmicks is that every time they come out with a new one, it is less relevant to the plot than the last one was, until eventually they hit a point where they're just like, oh, yeah, we found some rocket launchers in a cave, and that's just gonna be the gimmick now. But masks are Bionicle's first gimmick, and as such, they are critically important to the plot, to the point that basically every single arc of Bionicle has something to do with getting, finding, or transporting a mask. This is because every mask, of which there are about 1 billion, has its own unique superpower. So in our original lineup of the Toa, we've got stuff like the Mask of Strength, Speed, X-ray vision, water breathing, supplementary superpowers in addition to the normal elemental ones. Now, the practical reason for masks is that every Bionicle of the same generation has the same generic head, and it made more sense to have the masks be their faces and be able to just swap them out freely between any of them than to make a custom head for every Bionicle. And as a result of this, the majority of characters from the very beginning to the very end have a mask. And right now what needs to happen is that each of the Toa has to go around the island finding each of the other Toa's masks in their own color so that they can get those superpowers, and then once they do that, they they get a gold mask that looks like their original mask, but it's gold, and it has the powers of all the masks, so they don't have to keep switching out what mask they're wearing. So they start with these, and then they gotta get these so that they can get these. You following me? Great. So the Toa do a bunch of stuff and fight a bunch of Rahi and get all the masks, and then finally they're powerful enough to go fight Makuta, so they head down to his underground lair. Unfortunately for the Toa, Makuta's lair is guarded by these two giant crabs called Manas, and there are 2 of these crabs and 6 Toa, and the Toa get bodied. The Toa can't do anything to these crabs. These are like Elden Ring crabs. So in order to stand any chance against these fearsome crabs, the Toa have to combine into 2 big Toa called Toa Kaita. And I have a rant about the Toa Kaita, which I am going to do now. So one thing that was actually super cool about Bionicle sets is that in the back of all the instruction manuals, they had a piece of the bonus instructions for a combiner set. So if you had all the pieces and all the instructions for the necessary sets, you could combine them all into this big thing. And that's a great idea, because not only does it incentivize you to buy all the sets, it introduces this mystery element of like, what is this thing that I can build if I have all these things? However, eventually LEGO would realize that what they should be doing with this is using the pieces of characters to build different characters. Like, you combine the pieces from these 3 people, but that character that you build is not a literal in-universe combination of those 3 people. It's just built with the same parts. But they hadn't figured that out yet. So at this point, they're just like, yeah, Toa confused. Actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, everything confused. And you can kind of tell that even at the time, they knew this was a stupid idea, because this is one of 2 times ever that the Toa do this. And I'd like to reiterate that they do it so that they can defeat 2 crabs, and it's still close. So the Toa defeat the crabs, and then they go and they fight like shadow doppelgangers of themselves, and then finally they pull up on Makuta, and he initially appears to them as a corrupted, rusted Matoran, but then the Toa are like, okay, no, like, actually fight us, come on. And he turns into like a shadow vortex, and then they all just blast him with their elemental powers, and that defeats him. Here's the thing though, Makuta is like a shapeshifter, and at the moment his real body looks either like this or like this. So he could have just come out like this and murdered the Toa. Now, the reason he didn't do that is ultimately it wouldn't have been conducive to his schemes, but that doesn't change the fact that he basically just gave up. I mean, he frames it in a very evil way, you know, he's all, ooh, foolish Toa, I am darkness, I'm going very Bane with this. I am darkness, I am nothingness, I have schemes you cannot even begin to fathom, you Power Rangers looking pieces of shit. And like, all of that is true, but I really feel like on this particular occasion, Makuta was just using that as an excuse to not have to do any work. I like to imagine that Makuta just kind of forgot what day the Toa were coming, and he was chilling in his lair on his shadow couch, watching the finale of like, whatever was on in 2001. Shows that ended in 2001. Ooh, Zaboomafoo? Yes, okay, yes. Alright, so Makuta was on his couch watching the season finale of Zaboomafoo, and the Toa busted in and he was like, oh, right, okay, yeah, fight my crabs. And they beat the crabs and he was like, oh my god, alright, fine. Fight my Shadow Toa. And they beat the Shadow Toa and he was like, oh my god. Okay, fine, look, I'm a Shadow Vortex. Woo, woo, woo. Oh no, oh, you blasted me with your elemental powers. Ah, ouch, oof, I'm sure defeated. Look how defeated I am. I'm done with the Rahi plan. Everybody can live in peace. I'm not gonna do that anymore. Can you leave? I do not have time for this. I need to find out what happens with this lemur. And the Toa are like, okay, well, that was a little bit suspiciously easy, but I guess we're really like that. Let's go back upstairs and tell everybody. So they head back up to the surface and tell everybody, and everybody celebrates. And then genuinely like a day later, the entire island suddenly comes under attack by these things called Bohrok. Okay, so listen, I don't want to say anything crazy or controversial or make any kind of hyperbolic statements, you know? But the Bohrok are the best thing. Like out of all of the things that are, were, or will be, the best one is the Bohrok. Look upon the face of God. I mean, listen, I know that, like, the times we live in now are troubled and that there are challenges to living in the 21st century. I get it. But if you died before 2002 and never got to witness the Bohrok, why did you even bother being alive? The Bohrok are so goddamn cool, dude. They've got these roly-poly ball forms. They've got this neck thing. And what I need you to understand is that this neck thing that I'm doing right now, this is the most satisfying thing in the entire world. Big Pharma is going to try to take this video down because they know that if the Bohrok neck thing becomes public knowledge and people find out that they can just do this, mental illness will be over. They won't sell any medication and they'll all go broke. The Bohrok are actually so good that when I was preparing to make this video and I went and got all my Bionicles from my mom's attic, I found my Bohrok and they were in Kaita form, which I will remind you, that's not a thing. That doesn't exist and it's stupid and it's dumb and I don't like it and it's stupid and it's dumb. So I deconstructed them and individually rebuilt every single one and had to scour the bottom of that stupid crate that I showed you earlier for the little tiny hand shields because they weren't on the right Bohrok, and then I had to find rubber bands that fit them so I could have them do the neck thing, but I did all of it because I value them over my own life. So anyway, what are the Bohrok? The Bohrok are a massive horde of giant robot bugs that emerge from beneath Mata Nui and start trying to destroy everything on the entire island. Now, I say robot because unlike most Bionicles, there is no bio component to the Bohrok. They are purely mechanical. This is probably a good time to mention that what exactly Bionicles are is something that's never really explained. They have inorganic armor made of this stuff called protodermis, and then on the inside, they're all fleshy and squishy. And they are mentioned as having organs and muscles, but never bones, which leads me to believe that they have an exoskeleton, which effectively makes them insects, and I hate that. But the Bohrok do not have any of that. They are just machines, and they actually wouldn't do anything if they weren't being piloted. But they are being piloted by these things called Krana. Krana look like little tiny masks, but they're actually alive. They are sentient, and they're part of this gigantic hive mind. Now, individual Bohrok are basically just mindless drones, but the Krana hive mind as a whole is fairly intelligent, and it has one primary directive. And that directive is to annihilate everything on the surface of Mata Nui. Like, all of it. Rivers, trees, mountains, villages, just flatten the entire island. And notably, the Bohrok don't work for Makuta in the way that the Rahi did. Makuta awakened them in order to be a dick and waste everybody's time, but they're not serving him. This whole destroy the island thing is just kind of something that they're programmed to do. Now, initially, the Bohrok are not really hostile to the residents of Mata Nui. They don't care about the Toa or the Matoran or fighting. They're just trying to destroy the island. This place is filthy. Get out of the way. But the residents of Mata Nui are not super jazzed about this whole destroying their home thing, so they start fighting back, and they actually do a pretty good job. The Toa and even the Matoran are able to take out a good number of Bohrok, partially because if you take the Krana out of a Bohrok, it's just instantly defeated, and anybody can do that, and partially because this one Matoran makes this weird little punchy robot called a boxor that they drive around and use to punch Bohrok. But pretty quickly they start running into two problems. First of all, there's way too many Bohrok. Like, there are 6 types of Bohrok, but there are not 6 Bohrok. There are a million Bohrok, and it doesn't matter how many they take down because there's always more. Secondly, once the Bohrok realize that these people are actually going to be a major hindrance to their mission, they pivot their tactics to taking them out first. So they launch coordinated attacks on the villages, the most significant of which is when they mind control basically the entirety of the air village, because if a Krana gets onto somebody's face while they're not wearing a mask, it can basically add them to the swarm as another drone. So the whole air village gets mind controlled, and then Leiwa gets mind controlled because Leiwa's a huge idiot, and this is actually time number 1 out of like at least 3 that he gets brainwashed or mind controlled or something. Onua has to come and have like an I know you're in there somewhere fight with him, and then he saves him, and then they save the whole air village. But while Leiwa is mind controlled by the Krana, he finds out that the Krana all get their orders from these 2 queens deep underground called the Bohrok. And if the Toa can take out the Bohrok, it'll shut down the entire Krana hive mind, disabling the Bohrok and saving the island. Now, I've seen some mixed opinions about this, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like the Bohrok, because it's just like, okay, so the Bohrok are the best thing ever made. So you're like, yo, what, the Bohrok Queens? Bruh. I bet if I even look at the Bohrok Queens, the dopamine rush will just kill me on the spot. But also, that's exactly how I've always wanted to die. So bring them out. Let's see them. Show me the Bohrok Queens. So they bring them out, and they're just kind of like dragons. So the Toa find out where the Bohrok nest is, and they go down there to fight the Bohrok Queens. There's this really kind of strange plot cul-de-sac where they find effectively Iron Man armor down in the nest. They're like, oh, we're gonna use the Exo-Toa to, it's called Exo-Toa, by the way. We'll use the Exo-Toa to fight the Bohrok, but then it turns out, like, immediately that while they're wearing the Exo-Toa, they can't use their elemental powers, which are just better. So they're like, oh, man, forget about the Exo-Toa. Take it off. We'll use our elemental. So, like, why'd this happen? So the Toa fight the Bohrok with their elemental powers, but they're not able to hurt them because the Bohrok have a symbiosis where they get more powerful the closer together they are, which doesn't really make any sense because, like, they're always together. So, like, what? But the Toa are eventually able to defeat them by combining their elemental powers, which is actually the only way that Toa are ever able to defeat major villains, and they really should just lead with that, but they never do. It's always like, oh, last resort, I guess we gotta combine our elemental powers, it's the only thing we've got left. And combining the elemental powers of all 6 Toa creates a thing called a Toa seal, which is this giant crystalline prison made out of protodermis, which, remember, that's what Bionicles are made out of, but this is like a crystal made of it. It's what Toa use to indefinitely imprison bad guys because they're heroes and they're not supposed to kill people or dragons. So the Toa are victorious. They seal away the Bohrok, but then the ground suddenly collapses beneath their feet, and the Toa fall into tubes of this stuff called energized protodermis. And energized protodermis is this whole other thing that I'm not even gonna attempt to get into right now. It's so important, even though it so feels like it shouldn't be. But the short version is, it's an unstable mutagen tied to destiny. So depending on what your destiny is, if you're immersed in it, you either die on the spot or get transformed into something else. So the Toa obviously die on the spot, and that's the end of Bionicle. So I hope you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content, but there won't be any more because that is the end of Bionicle. Now, obviously the Toa don't die. The Toa get transformed into the Toa Nuva. So the Toa Nuva are not different people from the Toa Mata. These are the exact same guys, they just look different now. The Nuva transformation is a power-up. The Toa Nuva are much stronger than the Toa Mata ever were, except it's like the weirdest power-up in fictional history. Because in every single piece of media that I can think of, how big explosive transformative power-ups work is the heroes get them in order to contest a villain that was previously out of their league. But that's not what this is at all. The Toa just beat the villain pretty firmly within their league, and then they got the power up basically as a reward after they didn't need it anymore. And the other weird thing is that we're informed that this is a big, huge power-up, but it's not like the Toa are now untouchable in fights. As a matter of fact, their win-loss ratio post-transformation is so much worse than it was before the transformation. So, like, why did this actually happen at all if it isn't gonna affect the plot in any way? Well, again, that's a rhetorical question. I know why it happened. It's because they wanted to sell more toys. So they redesigned the Toa so that everybody would have to go and buy the Toa again, and then the excuse was, yeah, it's a power-up, the Toa are stronger, even though that's not true. It's not a power-up. It means nothing. The Toa Nuva, I think, are in general a design improvement on the Toa Mata. They are less iconic, but they're also less janky. Also, their masks are just terrible. The masks are a huge downgrade. One thing I will say for the Toa Nuva is that they are objectively much funnier than the old Toa, because they've got this, like, extreme sports theme going on, kind of. Like, Onua is now dual-wielding chainsaws that he can put on his feet to have chainsaw feet, and then he can rollerblade around underground on his chainsaw feet. And Tahu has two swords that combine into a lava surfboard. So it goes without saying that the Takanuva are a work of high art, because if they weren't, well, they wouldn't include a lava surfboard, now would they? Anyway, the Toa are now allegedly more powerful, and they waste not a second in letting this go directly to their heads. They're like, yeah, I mean, look, I know our only victories ever have come from working as a team, but I mean, come on. We're really powerful now, man. I don't think we gotta be doing any of that. So how about we all just go back to our own villages by ourselves. We'll help rebuild after the Bohrok attack. I'm sure everything will be fine. And after this, there's a little bit of downtime, during which we are introduced to the worst thing in the entire franchise. So during this downtime, Turaga Vakama, the elder of the fire village, approaches Tahu and gives him this mask called the Kanohi Vahi, the Mask of Time. And let me tell you something, I have a real bone to pick with the Mask of Time. So, I mean, first of all, the Mask of Time just looks stupid. Like, it exposes most of their weird Bionicle head, which was just never a good idea. But more importantly, so Vakama goes to Tahu, and he's like, listen, Tahu, this is the Mask of Time. It just dead-ass controls time. This is the most broken goddamn mask in the entire universe, and if you're not careful with it, you could literally just nuke the entire timeline and kill everyone. So you've really got to be cautious and smart about how you use it, Tahu, and not be a reckless dumbass with it, like you are with everything always. Actually, why am I giving this to you? And Tahu's like, okay, I'm sorry, Turaga. Where exactly did you get this thing from? And Vakama's like, well, you know, I didn't. What are we asking questions all of a sudden? Just take the fucking mask. And Tahu's like, alright, whatever, and he takes the mask. But here's the thing, okay? This is the introduction of the Mask of Time. Most powerful mask in the universe. Potentially apocalyptic weapon. Used with extreme care. Or you could just destroy everything. But here's the reality of the situation. The Mask of Time is worthless. Not one time in the entire franchise is the Mask of Time successfully used to accomplish anything. Oh, a lot of people want it and try and get it and try and use it for things, but they never succeed. So yeah, the Mask of Time, like, it doesn't really matter to the story, but it's gonna come up, and every time it does come up, I just want you to remember that it's terrible. So anyway, not long after all of this happens, these new silver Bohrok suddenly show up on Mata Nui called the Bohrok-Kal, and they go to the villages and they steal the Nuva symbols. Now, the Nuva symbols are these things that showed up in the temples in the villages after the Toa became the Toa Nuva, and if they are not in the temples in the villages, the Toa don't have their elemental powers, which, first of all, is a straight-up downgrade for the Toa Nuva. The Toa Mata didn't have to deal with that bullshit. And secondly, is a thing that you would think would matter and would maybe, like, come up again at some point, but it doesn't, and it doesn't. It's never mentioned again ever after this arc, because okay, so listen. I've got this theory about the Bohrok-Kal, and before I get into this, I should reiterate that I know nothing about the business or corporate side of Bionicle, so, like, this isn't real or true or based on any kind of evidence. I just made this up. This is not what happened. But also, simultaneously, this is what happened. This is exactly what happened. And if you try to tell me this is not what happened, I'll block you. Okay, so Lego made the Toa Mata, and the Toa Mata were really great, and everybody loved them, and they made a bunch of money. So Lego took that money, and they used it to make the Bohrok. And the Bohrok, as we have well established at this point, are the best thing ever made. So they made more money than exists in the universe. And Lego was like, awesome, now we can take this money and use it to revamp the Toa. So they blew every single Bohrok dollar on remaking the Toa into the Toa Nuva, and then the Toa Nuva were gonna ship out in like 5 minutes, and some intern at Lego was like, we don't have anybody for the Toa Nuva to fight, right? Like, our whole brand is based around character-focused play. Good versus evil, conflict, context, that's why people play with our toys. They kind of need villains to fight for this to work. We don't have any. Is that gonna be like a problem? And the executives at LEGO just fully panicked. They were just like, oh god, oh no, we did not think this through at all. We have no plan and no money. What are we gonna do? And then somebody else was like, oh, I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We've got 2 minutes, take some of the Bohrok, take them out back, spray paint them silver, send them out. We're doing Bohrok again, bitch. And that's what the Bohrok-Kal are. They're just Bohrok again. And like, they're cool. I'm not gonna sit here and act like they're not cool, but they're cool because they're Bohrok. And they're actually pretenders to the Bohrok throne of best thing ever. And as such, they deserve neither my love nor my respect. So then LEGO went to Greg Farshtey and they were like, Farshtey, listen, we have no money. We need to stall for time while we recoup some of these Takanuva costs. We have these new Bohrok-Kal. Do you think you can just take these and like write a filler episode? Just buy us some time until we can get some of our money back and then we can advance the story after that? But can you help us out here? And Farshtey was like, okay. And he wrote a filler episode. So now we're in the filler episode. Welcome to the filler episode. Okay, so the Bohrok-Kal. The Bohrok-Kal are a Batman-level contingency plan created by the Bohrok to unseal them in case they ever got sealed. The Bohrok-Kal are kind of like Bohrok Spec Ops as opposed to the broader Bohrok army. There are way less of them. There's only 6 instead of 6 types, but a million of them. But they are way stronger and they're also intelligent instead of just being mindless drones. And also, they have weird alternate elemental powers. Call that shit alt Bohrok, am I right? So Bohrok Team 6 here steals the Nuva symbols and then they start wandering around the island, and most of this arc is just that. A lot of these early Bionicle arcs are extremely lacking in substance, but in this case, this period of the Bohrok-Kal running around looking for the Bohrok is actually very important because it's really funny. Because the thing about the Bohrok-Kal is that they are completely non-hostile. They are not looking for a fight, and they're also not even trying to destroy anything. They're just trying to free the Bohrok. But obviously, if they free the Bohrok, they're gonna unleash the entire Bohrok swarm again, so the Toa need to stop them. But what you need to understand about the Toa is that they came into this arc like, hell yeah, we're the Takanuva, brother. We're the strongest Toa there ever have been ever. Ain't no fucking way anybody's ever gonna beat us. Oh no, oh you guys took the Nuva symbols. Oh, whoa, I'm shook. Oh no, oh wow. Oh, sorry, am I supposed to be like caring about that? Because I do not need my elemental powers to fight 6 Bohrok. I literally just took out like 300 Bohrok last arc by myself before I got my power up. So yeah, you guys are about to get destroyed. And the Bohrok-Kal are just like, okay. I'm pretty sure I didn't ask. I don't remember asking. And then most of this arc is just different arrangements of Toa picking a fight with different arrangements of Bohrok-Kal and just getting completely embarrassed every single time. And the Bohrok-Kal don't give a shit. They just beat them up and then keep walking. The funniest part of all of this is when 3 of the Toa are like, all right, guys, I got this figured out. What we need to do is form a Toa Kaida. Because like they still won't have their elemental powers, but like, I don't know, man, Toa Kaida are pretty strong. Remember when we took out those 2 crabs? I don't know, that was pretty impressive. So they form a Toa Kaida and they attack the Bohrok-Kal, and the Bohrok-Kal are like, oh, yeah, we can also just form a Bohrok Kaida. So they do, and then they beat them up, and then they're like, okay, cool, and leave. And apparently this was sufficiently embarrassing that the Toa just gave up on ever trying to form a Toa Kaida ever again for the rest of their lives. So eventually the Bohrok-Kal find out where the Bohrok are, and I don't really know why they wouldn't just know that. And I don't even mean like, oh, they have like a tracking sense. They always know where the Bohrok are at all times, which they should have, but they don't even need that. The Bohrok are at their own house, and the Bohrok-Kal, who were created with the sole purpose of helping out the Bohrok in case they were ever in trouble, don't know where the Bohrok live. So that's insane, but they know now, so they go down there. And the Toa are like, okay, well, I mean, I don't really want to like go down there because I don't know why this would go differently than the last 10 times these guys have kicked our ass, but they're gonna unleash the Bohrok if we don't stop them, so I guess we gotta go try. So the Toa get down down there, and the Bohrok-Kal are right about to put the Nuva symbols into the Toa seal. The Toa seal was made from the elemental powers of all 6 Toa, so the Nuva symbols, which are also that, will undo the seal if they put them, well, it's not even in it's in this, like, cube that, you know what, they're gonna unseal the Bohrok and it's gonna be bad, okay? So Tahu steps up and he's like, alright, you know what, man? I didn't want to have to do this, but desperate times call for desperate measures, you know? You forced my hand. I'm breaking out the Mask of Time. So Tahu uses the power of the Mask of Time to freeze the Bohrok-Kal in time. And with the Bohrok-Kal frozen in time, the Toa have an open opportunity to just walk over and take out their Krana, and then it's over. They're defeated because they're Bohrok and they can't do anything without Krana. So alright, Tahu, coming in clutch with the Mask of Time, saving the day. Pretty slick, pretty good move, I gotta give it up. But Tahu, you fool, you've forgotten the most important thing in all of this, which is that the Mask of Time is fucking worthless, and it can't ever accomplish anything. So needless to say, this doesn't work. See, it turns out that the Bohrok-Kal are actually just, like, straight up cheating. They're out here using Game Shark, and right in the moment before they complete their mission, they just kind of, like, get an impenetrable force field for free. So it actually doesn't even matter that they're stopped in time, because the Toa can't touch them. So then Golly steps up, and she's like, okay, Tahu, listen, I don't know what the deal is with this mask that you have now, but what I do know is that it's garb. So your plan, we're gonna be done with that, because it was bad. We're gonna do my plan instead. And Golly's plan is for the Toa to channel their elemental powers into the Nuva symbols. This is going to bypass the force field, and since the Bohrok-Kal are holding the Nuva symbols, the power of the Toa is gonna get transferred directly into them. So they start to do this, and the Bohrok-Kal start absorbing the power, and they're like, yo, this is kind of sick, actually. We're getting so much power right now. I don't really think that we need the Bohrok Swarm. I'm pretty sure we can just destroy the whole island by ourselves. Let's just keep the Nuva symbols. We don't need to free the Bohrok. And the Bohrok are sitting there in the crystal listening to this like 2 feet away, and they're like, haha. Hey guys, how about we don't get distracted right now? You know, let's just go with the original plan. I mean, you're right here. All you gotta do is put the thing in the thing and let us out, and then we can destroy the island with the Bohrok Swarm. Just let us out. Please let us out. Please let us. And the Bohrok-Kal are like, nah, you know what? I'm actually not hearing that right now. So I'm thinking we just do what we want to do instead of what you're telling us to do. But, you know, we've got it under control. There's nothing to worry about, you know? Like, everything's gonna be fine. And then actual seconds later, all of them absorb too much power, can't control it, overload, and die to their own powers. And the Bohrok are just sitting there in the crystal like, God damn it. Why did we even make these? I hate these fucking guys. And then the Toa are just like, okay, nice. And they take the Nuva symbols and leave. And that's the end of the arc. So like, just so we're all on the same page here, nothing of any consequence happened during this arc. The Toa are still the Toa Nuva, the Bohrok are still sealed, the Bohrok-Kal actually accomplished nothing. The Nuva symbols are straight up never mentioned again. You might think that this would be like a moment of character growth for the Toa, or that they might like learn something from getting their asses kicked by these Bohrok 10 times in a row. Might do something to make them less stupid and arrogant and self-centered and stupid, but it really didn't. In the next arc, they're still on their exact same bullshit. The only thing in this arc that you can really even argue was important to the long-term storyline of Bionicle was the introduction of the Mask of Time, but maybe you see where I'm going with this. The Mask of Time sucks, and it did nothing, and it was introduced as completely useless, which, to be fair, is a good tone setter for it going forward, but I can't help but feel that wasn't the intention. So, like, the moral of the story is, this was filler. Now, the good news is that the filler did, in fact, do what it was supposed to do, that being buy Lego time, in which to get back some of that sweet Toa Nuva money. So now Lego is like, alright, you know what? Enough is enough. We've got our money, we can actually advance the story. Enough of this filler episode bullshit. Let's talk some real talk, okay? Bionicle the movie, Mask of Light. So there are these two Matoran named Jala and Takua, and both of these guys have actually been around since the very beginning. I haven't told you about them or any of the other many Matoran characters because nothing that they've done has really mattered that much, but it's about to. Both of them are Fire Matoran. Jala is captain of the Fire Village military, and Takua is the chronicler, which means he follows around the Toa and records what they do. Both of these guys are also stars of this Matoran sport called Koli. It's kind of like lacrosse. They play it at the beginning of the movie, they lose. It kind of matters, but it doesn't really matter. Also, Jala's name is spelled like this, but it's pronounced Jala for reasons that humanity really has yet to fully understand. So one day Takua is screwing around in the local volcano, as you do, and he finds this mask inside of a rock. And this mask is really crazy, it glows, it's gold, it's obviously a Toa mask, but it's not any of the ones we know about, so they take it to the Turaga. And the Turaga read the inscription on the mask, and they're like, okay, so listen. This is the Kanohi of Voki, the Mask of Light, and it belongs to the 7th Toa, the Toa of Light. Now, the Toa of Light is gonna be the one to actually, for real, defeat Makuta for good, because, you know, light, shadow, he's, you know. Now, whoever found this thing is now the Herald of the 7th Toa, which means it's your job to track this guy down, because we don't know where he is, we didn't even know he existed until just now, and bring him the mask. And the Herald is actually Takua, but Takua's like, what, come on, couldn't be me, I don't have responsibilities. Guys, the real Herald is Jala, so it's his job. It's not, I'm not the Herald. I guess people are like saying I'm the Herald. I'm not the Herald, so stop saying I'm the fucking Herald. And Jala's pretty mad about this because Takua's his best friend, but he already kind of thought Takua was an irresponsible moron. Jala told you not to be screwing around in that volcano, Takua, and now you're trying to pawn your destiny off onto him like an asshole. So Jala pretty much blackmails Takua into coming on this quest with him, although to be honest, quest is generous because they don't know what they're doing and they also don't know where they're going, so pretty much they just bumble around the island doing nothing. Now, meanwhile, Makuta catches wind of this whole 7th Toa Mask of Light situation, and he's like, yeah, you know what, I don't know about this one. Kind of feel like this is gonna become a problem for me. I might have to actually do something. Because the thing about Makuta is that he never does anything ever. I mean, alright, yes, he put Mata Nui to sleep, but that was 1,000 years ago, and ever since then, he just had random animals doing his bidding for him, and the only reason he stopped doing that was that the Toa came to his lair and beat up his crabs, and he was too lazy to fight them, so he just gave up on the whole plan. Then he awakened the Bohrok, but he wasn't running that. He wasn't in charge of that. That was the Barag. And then the Bohrok-Kal straight up had nothing to do with him. That was like a weird Barag contingency plan. He didn't even watch the filler. But now things are getting a little bit too real. There's suddenly a Toa of Light on the table. Makuta's not about that, so he's gonna step in and take care of this himself. But when I say that he's gonna take care of this himself, I don't mean that he's gonna, like, take care of this himself. That's crazy. Makuta wouldn't do that. Instead, what he's gonna do is send out new goons that are, like, a little bit stronger than the last goons the Toa fought to handle this for him. So Makuta sends out the Rahkshi, and, like, you gotta love the Rahkshi, come on now. Rahkshi are the quote-unquote sons of Makuta. This counts as handling things himself because the Rahkshi are actually made of his own essence in the form of krata, which are gross little worms that he pulls out of his body and then exposes to energized protodermis to turn them into suits of armor, the Rahkshi, and then he puts another krata in that to pilot it. So for those of you keeping score, this is now the 3rd consecutive antagonist that is 6 color-coded suits of armor controlled by a gross little organic thing that starts with Kra that LEGO made way too many of. Now, kind of like the Bohrok-Kal, the Rahkshi do not have the 6 standard elemental powers. They have their own elemental powers, except that in this case, the word elemental is being abused horribly. So like the red and the white ones have fear and anger respectively, and you're like, oh, all right, okay, so it's like emotion powers. That's kind of interesting. And then the black one has hunger, and you're like, okay, well that's not an emotion, but like, okay, sure. And then the green one has poison, and you're like, what? And then the blue and the brown one have disintegration and fragmentation, which first of all, are the same thing. Secondly, aren't even in the world of elements anymore. And then thirdly, okay, so there's just no theme. All right, great. Cool. Awesome. Great. Now, I don't have any of the Rahkshi, but I do know for a fact that I used to have all of the Rahkshi. And the reason I know that is because something just fell on my foot and it really hurt. Ow. LEGO tricked me into making this, and I resent them for it. Anyway, Makuta sends out the Rahkshi to track down Jala and Takua and get the Mask of Light. They attack some of the villages, the Toa try and fight them off, but it doesn't go well because the Toa still somehow haven't figured out the whole only effective as a team thing. Especially Tahu, who just keeps trying to 1v1 these Rahkshi. He gets got by the poison Rahkshi, and then he gets got by the anger Rahkshi. He starts going off and being like, "Fire has no friends," and attacking the other Toa, and then they have to do a purification ritual on him to stop him from dying and being a dickhead. But at this point, they're all just like, whatever, man, this is just normal Tahu behavior. Meanwhile, Makuta keeps calling up Takua on shadow Skype and being like, "Takua, you fool, you will never be Herald of the Mask of Light, and if you keep trying to do this, I'm gonna kill everybody." Just being a dick, you know, just saying Makuta shit like he does. Takua's like, "Oh man, maybe this wasn't my destiny at all. Jala, you take the mask, you do it. I can't be involved in this." But then the Rahkshi attack Takua, and he's like, "Oh man, they were never after the mask at all. They were after the Herald, and that's me." So he goes back to Jala, and the two of them wind up at this temple in the middle of the island, but then all the Rahkshi show up, but then all the Toa show up, and they're all finally united, and there's this big fight, and the Toa win by combining their elemental powers. Who would have thought? I mean, who could have guessed? Who could have guessed that that would work? But before they can take out the last Rahkshi, it has Takua cornered and it's about to kill him, but Jala jumps in front of him and takes the hit and dies to save Takua. And Jala's sacrifice finally inspires Takua to stop dicking around and being a little bitch about everything. And he finally accepts his destiny and puts on the Mask of Light and is transformed by its power into Takanuva, the Toa of Light. So that's the resolution. Takua was the Toa of Light all along. This was not a journey to physically find the seventh Toa, but rather a journey for Takua to find himself. The real Bionicle, the movie Mask of Light, was the friends we made along the way. So Takanuva shoots a laser and blows up the last Rahkshi, and then he's like, "Okay, I'm headed down to Makuta's lair. I'm gonna fight him one-on-one. I'm gonna finish this." And the other Toa are like, I feel like you might want to reconsider this plan, dude. Like, we just now finally figured out teamwork, and you're now gonna go and fight Makuta by yourself? And Takanuva's like, "That's exactly what I'm gonna do because I'm really angsty about Jala dying, and this is my destiny, and I'm the Toa of Light, and that's just the kind of shit I'm on." So Takanuva heads down to Makuta's lair on this vehicle that he makes out of the other Toa's weapons, and this thing is actually a scam. Because obviously, to tie in with the release of this movie, they released a physical Takanuva set, because all the kids who saw the movie are obviously gonna want to buy the Takanuva set. But then LEGO was like, "Okay, well damn, we can only sell a Toa for like $10 though. And that's fine when there's 6 of them and the kids have to buy all of them. But if we're just releasing one and we know everybody is gonna buy it, $10? That's not really enough money. We're way too greedy for that shit. So let's unavoidably bundle Takanuva with this stupid thing, which by the way has no custom parts of its own whatsoever. So it costs us no money, but then we can bump up the price of this bundle set from $10 to like, I don't know, maybe $30. I mean, that's just good business if you think about it. Like, we're pretty good business people. That's just good business. So I'll tell you what, put this thing in the movie and have Takanuva ride it down to Makuta's lair and then literally immediately crash it into a wall and it explodes. And then we can include it in the Takanuva set and sell them for more money. We're so goddamn good at business. Fuck. So Takanuva rides this thing down to the lair and he's getting ready to fight Makuta, but it turns out that this water Matoran named Hali stowed away on the vehicle with him and somehow lived through it crashing into a wall and blowing up. I don't really know how that happened. Hali is like, "Takanuva, you're being a complete idiot right now, okay? Even if you are gonna 1v1 Makuta, which you shouldn't do, we should all be here to see you beat him, and then we should all reawaken Mata Nui together." And Takanuva agrees, so she goes back up to go get everybody, and she walks back up and then then everybody else walks back down. So clearly we didn't need the vehicle. So Takanuva pulls up to Makuta's lair and he's like, Makuta, you've been ruining everybody's lives for the last 1,000 years. Your boy just killed my best friend. Get your shady ass out here, and I swear to God, if I see one singular crab right now, I'm going to fucking kill you. And Makuta comes out and he's like, ooh, hey, woo, wow. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Takanuva. Hey, round of applause for Takanuva. Am I right, everybody? My man was a Matoran until 5 minutes ago, and then he put on a mask and took out one Rahkshi, and now he thinks he can come up into my lair like he's all that, like he's that guy, and square up with me, Makuta, Master of Shadows. Dude, I'm just gonna kill you. Like, you do know that, right? Like, I feel bad. And then he's like, for your next great failure, a simple game of Coley. Just remember how I said how they're professional Coley players and they lost the Coley match at the beginning of the movie, and I said it's not really important, but it kind of is? Well, this is why it kind of is. Makuta's bringing it full circle to be an asshole, which I find hilarious for two reasons. First of all, it implies that Makuta was watching the Coley match either because he genuinely enjoys watching Matoran Coley, or just so he could be a dick about it later. And then number two is just like, imagine that you're playing basketball with your friends one day and you get dunked on, and then later that day you find out that you are a superhero and your best friend gets murdered by a demon. So you go to confront Satan to get revenge and save the universe, and Satan is like, for your next great failure, a simple game of 2K. So Makuta makes an energy ball and they play Coley with it, and there's a whole fight, and eventually Takanuva wins because he does this move that he tried to do at the beginning of the movie, and it didn't work then, but it does work now because of destiny. So Takanuva slams Makuta across the lair, but just then all the other Toa and Turaga and Matoran show up, and Makuta is like, they will not leave, and he caves in the ceiling so that they're all trapped down in the lair and can't go back up to Mata Nui. And this pisses Takanuva off, so he tackles Makuta into a pool of energized protodermis. Remember energized protodermis? It turned the Toa into the Toa Nuva, it turns Krata into Rahkshi. You don't remember? Okay. And the energized protodermis fuses the two of them into one singular entity called Takanuva. And I don't approve of that at all. I hate that very much. Get this away from me. I don't know how to explain this, but something about the word Takanuva fills me with strong emotions, mostly rage, but also sadness. So my favorite character, Takanuva, comes out of the pool and he's like, light has revealed the way of Mata Nui, the great spirit. We're gonna revive Mata Nui. We're gonna reawaken Mata Nui. Come on. So they go to the back of the lair, and there's this huge gate, and Takanuva lifts it up, and everybody starts running through, and Hali runs past, and she has Jala's mask with her, and he's like, oh, yo, hang on. And he uses his weird light shadow powers to bring Jala back to life. But that's a lot of effort when you're also holding up a giant gate, so it falls on him, crushing him. But the mask of light comes flying out from under the gate, and then Takanuva is also brought back to life, basically just through the power of friendship. It's really not explained. So that's pretty much it. Happy ending. Jala's alive, Takanuva is victorious, the Toa are finally united, Makuta is crushed to death under a giant gate. It's time to go reawaken Mata Nui. There is just one minor snag in all of this though, which is of course that Mata Nui isn't down there. Instead, what they find down there is a massive underground cavern containing an ocean in the middle of which is another island, and everyone is very confused because they all thought that Mata Nui would just kind of be here and they would just poke him and he would wake up. They don't know what this place is. They don't know what's going on. And then the Turaga are like, yeah, okay, I kind of thought that this would happen. Okay, so here's the thing. We maybe, possibly, you know, who knows? Who really could say? Might have been lying about some stuff. And the Toa are like, what do you mean? Like what? Well, you know, pretty much just like the entire storyline of this franchise, I'd say is the main thing. It's kind of the only, pretty much just that. Just that. But like, you know, we want, all right, listen, we're going to that new island over there. So everybody start building boats. And while you do that, we'll explain. And that is where the Mata Nui era ends. ends, and for a lot of people, that is where Bionicle ends, because that is where they stopped following it. But what I want you to understand right now is that is not where Bionicle ends, that is where Bionicle starts. This video that you just watched was not Bionicle lore. This video was a primer to set the groundwork that I need to establish in order to begin to tell you about Bionicle lore in the next video. This video wasn't even like the tip of the iceberg. This was like a penguin atop the iceberg. Next time we'll get to the iceberg, okay? So if you're interested in hearing about the real storyline of Bionicle, which if you've made it this far, I promise you are, then subscribe to the channel so you're notified when I drop the next one. And I will see you all in part 2, the Mata Nui era, where we learn that the Turaga had an edgy teenage phase where they all became furries. Makuta is literally just Emperor Palpatine, and Bionicles can have boobs. See you next time.